President Biden, when he spoke about inflation the other day, said essentially the problem was he's done a lot of good stuff, but the American people, they're just not paying attention. Yesterday at the White House press briefing, Jen Psaki blamed parents for the baby formula shortage. This White House time and time again blames everyone else without taking any responsibility. More often than not, it is the American people that they blame. I want to play you a couple of clips. This is Brian Deese. He is the National Economic Council chairman, talking about the baby formula shortage.
Look, the administration has been on this from the get-go. A lot of this emanated from a plant in Michigan that was producing formula that didn't meet safety standards. Look, I'm a parent of small kids. Safety is paramount in this place. We need to have high standards for safety. That plant was shut down because of those safety concerns. And the day that recall happened, this administration sent out guidance to every state to update their regulations. We've been working with the manufacturers since that happened, and part of the reason why production has already increased is because of that work. But we're not resting. The president made clear yesterday to the manufacturers and the retailers that we are going to use every lever at the federal government that we can to help support this supply chain moving more quickly.
And one more from Brian Deese.
Well, as a parent and with friends and colleagues, we was aware that people were starting to have trouble in stores. But we were aware of this from when the FDA had to take its action back in February with Abbott and with the steps in the Michigan facility. And we have had a team on this from the FDA and in the interagency process since then. And the steps that I mentioned are steps that have been taken over the course of multiple weeks, and we are ramping those up.
So is this like the Midas touch, except everything they touch turns to poop? Because so they've been aware of this problem since the FDA says, by the way, the FDA was aware well before the FDA got involved. In October, the whistleblowers started blowing the whistle. The FDA didn't even move until December. The plant shut down in February. They've been aware of it the whole time and did nothing, except they say they did something. If they were doing something, they made the situation worse. Listen, it's everything this administration tries to get a handle on. They seem to make it worse, and then they blame you. They blame American businesses. They blame everyone except themselves. They refuse to take any responsibility. The buck stops with Joe Biden, except Joe Biden doesn't even know where he is. Hard for the buck to stop with him when he doesn't know where he is. And you've got this lovely sentiment from Jen Psaki, the now outgoing White House press secretary, headed to MSNBC.
Said it was a public health question. Which agency should that question be directed to? Just the very practical, immediate question of if you can't find formula and you need it for your baby to eat, what should they be doing?
We would certainly encourage any parent who has concerns about their child's health or well-being to call their doctor or pediatrician.
Call your doctor or pediatrician. Don't call the government. The government cannot help you. There's a larger issue here, and it's one now being revealed by the Biden administration. We have, all of us to a degree, all of us have now begun to witness the inability of government to get things done. It is remarkable to me how the people who hated Donald Trump and did not want Donald Trump in charge of the levers of power now want the government to do everything, and the government can't barely even deliver the mail. And the government can't deal with the baby formula shortage. And you know, the optics of this, the Biden administration sent a bunch of baby formula to the detention facilities in Texas. Now, they had to do it. If we're going to detain the illegal aliens, you have to feed them. I'm sorry, you have to feed them whether you like it or not. And if they're babies, the government uses formula. So they keep formula in reserve so that they can send it to those facilities. And there's a great conservative outrage. Oh, they're putting illegal aliens over the citizens of the United States. Yeah, it's the optics of it are horrible for the Biden administration. But I'm not going to fire political targets at the Biden White House on this, because either you're going to let them go or you're going to keep them there and feed them. Which would you prefer? You and I would prefer them not to come here anyway. The Biden administration hasn't secured the border, so you got to feed them. Oh, but why can't they ship them to the American people? Well, because there are procurement acts, there are appropriations laws, and this formula was not used or not bought to take care of every American kid. It was bought to feed people in detention and their children. I'm sorry, it sucks. That's the reality of it. I'm not defending it per se so much as explaining to you the reality. Everybody wants to be outraged about everything. You want to be outraged about this, and you should be outraged about this, because we wouldn't be in this problem but for the border being secured. The border's not secured, so they do have to divert from private stores to these detention facilities. Yes, they cause this problem, and yes, let them deal with the fallout. But the reality here is that too many people are now dependent on government for everything. And maybe it's time for us to learn again the lesson that Ronald Reagan taught us, that the government that does the least does the best. We have government in every aspect of our lives now, and every aspect of our lives that the government touches, it turns to poop. It is the anti-Midas touch. And Joe Biden, he's got the anti-Midas touch. Look at what's happening now. I wasn't here yesterday. This is the story I was itching to be here for. The government under the Biden administration has stopped exploration leases in ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve, in other Alaskan territories now, and in the Gulf of Mexico. They've shut them down. This came out on the same day. AAA, the American Automobile Association, says that gas prices are now at record highs. We have hit record highs in this country for gas at the pump nationwide. In some parts of the country, including California, diesel for truck drivers is over $6.50 a gallon. I, in Atlanta, coming home from the airport last night, had to put gas in my car, and it was $4.30 a gallon. It's absurd. Having a real impact on American take-home pay, among other things. Real impact. And this White House has now decided to curtail supplies because of the environmental cultists within this administration. Everything the government is in charge of breaks now, thanks to Joe Biden. And then they blame you when it's broken. They blame you. They say you're not paying attention to all the good stuff they've done. And then you get, for example, the Secretary of Commerce, Raimondo, talking about climate change. They're all in on climate change. This is one of the reasons they're restricting oil and gas. The internal documents of the administration say it's all about climate change. They've got to protect you from yourself to save the planet where you can't afford to live anymore. Listen to this.
While Americans are struggling and seeing their paychecks shrink, a 24% increase over FY21 levels for NOAA doesn't really help families put food on the table or clothes on the back at a time when inflation's at a 40-year high. Can you talk about how this massive allocation of funds helps to combat inflation or deal with supply chain issues that you say are so important?
Yes. So, look, we believe climate change is an existential threat. So, children won't forget about clothes on their back. They're not going to be able to have a life if we don't deal with climate change.
Well, my constituents can't forget about the need to put clothes on their kids' back right now. And climate change, as you say, being an existential threat, it is not going to solve the problem of making sure the kids are clothed and fed and off to school.
So climate change is more important than your clothes. Keeping your kids on a planet that's not going to die is way more important than keeping your kids in clothes. And I mean, honestly, the groomers wouldn't mind it if your kids roamed around naked anyway. Absolutely absurd. These people are ruining your life and your livelihood and your family's well-being for their environmental cultists who are convinced the world comes to an end in less than a decade. They're blaming you for hoarding. And by the way, to be fair, there are a lot of people hoarding. There are a lot of people hoarding food, a lot of people hoarding formula. And you know what? It's going to get worse because of the incompetence of this administration. As the supply chain situation eases, you're going to have more hoarding of formula. And you can't really blame these people. By the way, it also depends on which store you go to. I was really curious. I was staying at a hotel, and right across the street was a 24-hour CVS when I was in New York the other night. So I went into the CVS, no formula, none, completely empty. Completely empty, which is very typical. However, there are little bodegas up and down the street, and if you went in there, there was formula. So you go to the CVS, and the entire store shelves are empty. You go to the little bodega just down the street, and they've got formula. It may not be the one you want. It may be Similac and not Enfamil, or Enfamil, not Similac, or one of the other brands, but they've got formula. If you're desperate, they have it. It really depends on where you go. Ethnic grocery stores are reported to have way more formula. So if there's a Mexican grocer or an Asian market in your neighborhood, if they sell formula, you may find it there, even if you can't get it at Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, or Target. A lot of grocery stores are getting their supplies back faster than the big box stores, but it's a problem. It is an indisputable problem. And not just is it an indisputable problem, but it's a problem that the government did exacerbate, even though the original problem isn't theirs. And now their solution is to blame you for everything. They're making your life more difficult in practical ways that matter. They are making it tougher for you to, on a daily basis, afford the things you need to take care of your family, generally, not specifically, across the board. There are specific things that are just fine. You go to the grocery store, you can find specific products. But generally, you go to your grocery store, there are still empty shelves in a lot of places, and everything is more expensive. And then when you complain, it's your fault. You're not grateful enough to be rid of the mean tweets. And this goes back to the fundamental problem the Democrats have. Across the board, the polling shows more and more Americans actually would rather have Donald Trump come back now and the Republicans come back. The reality is that the Democrats and their environmental cultists, among others, are seeding the ground to allow a resurgence of the Republican Party and Donald Trump in America. They're so desperate to get rid of what they perceive to be an existential threat. They're taking actions that make people long for the mean tweets. Well, I'm not sure he will run again in 2024. I certainly think those who carry on his issues and his standards will run in 2024, and Americans will vote for that compared to what they have now. And the only people who will blame them are the Democrats being thrown out of office.